Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to Today I'm going to make a breakfast scramble. Basically, I'm going to take eggs, ham, cheese, mushrooms, peppers, onions, combine them, and I'm going to can them. It'll be shelf stable for about 6 months, and it'll be a really easy breakfast some morning. So I'm going to start off by rehydrating some of my dehydrated vegetables. I have some dehydrated onions, some dehydrated green peppers, and also some dehydrated mushrooms. I like to mark my jars with a chalk marker because it washes off really easily and I can reuse the lids for dehydrating. So I'm going to start by measuring my ingredients. Rehydrating, you can rehydrate in cold water, you can rehydrate in hot water. I'm going to use hot water today just because it goes a little bit faster. And generally a good measure, or a good guide really, is about 1/4 cup of vegetable is going to rehydrate to about 1 cup of fresh. It's going to be a little different than fresh. So I'm going to start with my dehydrated onion, and because I need about 2 cups of onions, I'm going to put in 1/2 cup of dehydrated onion in there. Mushrooms, I need about 1 cup of mushrooms for this recipe. Hear that little pop? That's because I definitely go ahead and vacuum seal all mine. Actually, I opened my peppers and I need about 1 cup of those. So I'm going to add about 1/4 cup of the peppers. And the mushrooms, I need probably a little bit less than a cup. So I'm going to add about 1/8 cup of mushrooms. So I have all of my vegetables in here. You can see that they're in there, and I'm basically going to add some hot water, which I boiled, and then I'm going to let this sit for probably about ½ hour to an hour while I do some other things. I'm going to, while this is rehydrating, I'm going to go ahead and prep some potatoes and prep some ham, and I'll come back after these are rehydrated. We'll combine the ingredients, and we'll see how this all comes together. All right, I'm back working on our breakfast in the jar. So we had our dehydrated onions, peppers, and mushrooms that I put with hot water. And then I actually covered these. These have probably been sitting for about an hour or so. And I'm going to strain the water off. And you can see that I have vegetables here that have rehydrated. Now, if I'm using these in soup or something, I'll just throw them in, not to worry about it. But because they need to be rehydrated somehow, I didn't want the eggs to be rehydrating the vegetables, and that's why I rehydrated these first. So we don't have to get all of the water out for this recipe, but we'll put that back in here and remove that. And we have about 2 cups of vegetables. So they rehydrated about doubling in size. And I've got a nice mixture of onions, mushrooms, and green peppers. So to that, I also took 4 cups of potatoes and diced those, and then I browned them slightly. For some reason, I think potatoes do better in canning when they're just browned a little bit, not really cooked through. And then I diced a couple cups of ham. Now, the best thing to do here is I did not season the potatoes because I put salt and pepper in the egg mix. So if I'm doing soups or something, definitely you can just put the vegetables in raw and they'll cook because you're going to be canning them for quite a while. In this particular case, I diced the potatoes a little bit large because I really wanted a bite of potato as opposed to something really soft. So what I'm going to do now is I have 8 eggs that are scrambled, and I'm going to add my vegetables to that. And I have about 1 teaspoon of salt and 1 teaspoon of pepper in these scrambled eggs also. So I'll add all of that. And then I'm going to add my potatoes and my ham. I think I'm just going to pick up the potatoes and put those in. So that's about 4 cups of potatoes diced and then just slightly browned, and about 2 cups of ham. Now, if your ham is really salty, you might want to use a little bit less salt with your eggs. Like I said, I used about 1 teaspoon. You can always season afterwards, but keep in mind that your ham has salt in it. So I'm going to give this a good stir. Again, that's with 8 eggs that are scrambled. And that looks pretty good. And then I'm going to add a cup of cheddar cheese. Now, this is a package that has 2 cups in it, so I know that I need about a half a package. So rather than measure, I'm just going to go ahead and do that. And I will mix that in. So basically, we're going to have eggs, peppers, mushrooms, onions, cheddar cheese, and it should make a pretty good breakfast. Now, anytime you're canning, you need to pressure can your meat 75 minutes if you're using a pint, 90 minutes if you're using a quart. I'm going to use just pint size today because that's a good size for breakfast, I think. Now, your pressure canner is probably going to be different than mine, and you need to follow the directions on your pressure canner. I use an electric canner. I use it for a lot of reasons, and I love it. I have a glass stovetop, so I'm not really trusting a pressure or a regular canner on that. They're also really heavy, and since there's just 2 of us now, smaller quantities work really well for us. Hang on just a minute. I need to grab this. So what I'm going to do now, my pressure canner requires me to warm up the jars, which I did, so they're warm but they're not hot, and I took them out because I have egg mixture here and I don't want to have the eggs coagulate when I put them in. I also cooled my potatoes prior so that they didn't go in either. So I am going to simply spoon this mixture in, leaving about probably about a good inch and a half in here with each one of these because these eggs are going to expand. So I'm going to fill these about 3/4 of the way through full. And I should be able to get at least 5 of these, I'm hoping. Now generally I'm going to use a wide mouth jar for this, but I have to be honest and tell you I'm just out of jars. So I'm using one narrow mouth, which I prefer not to have that except for liquids or maybe loose soups, but you have to work with what you have sometimes. So I'll put a little bit more in here. And this will make a nice breakfast that really can be heated in a microwave. Definitely you would be able to take and put this, you know, take it out and spoon it and put it on a plate. I'll put a little bit more in each of these jars. Like so. And it looks like I'm going to be able to get one more there. So I'm going to get 5 pints of this, and with 8 eggs in there, it's not quite 2 eggs per serving with everything. Cheese. All right, so I wasn't the neatest with all of this. I'm gonna wipe this up a little bit. All right, so what I have is 5 pint-sized jars that I'm ready to go with here. The next thing you really want to do, let me show you something here, is really 2 things. You want to do what's called debubbling, and that's where you're just going to put the jar in and kind of, or put a knife in or something, and then just sort of remove any air bubbles. Now in this particular case, because I have a lot of solids up on top, there aren't going to be as many air bubbles at the bottom. Normally you're going to fill your jars to within an inch or half an inch depending upon what you're doing. But in this particular case, when we can these, we're going to get some moisture coming out from the potatoes, from the vegetables, and the eggs are probably going to puff up a little bit. So I have these filled really a little bit more than 3/4 full. Last thing you want to do before you put your lids on is you want to just take a clean rag, clean dishcloth, dip it in a little bit of vinegar, and then wipe the rims really well. And the reason you want to do this is because if you have any grease, your lids may not stick or seal, I should say. And so this step is really important. The only time I don't do this is if I'm canning milk, because you just don't want the vinegar and the milk together. The only oil that's in this is I used about a tablespoon of olive oil to brown the potatoes. So that's good. Then I go ahead and I put my lids on. Some people will say, well, don't you need to put the lids in hot water? Lots of people still do that. I use ball lids, and if you look at the directions on the bottom of the box, it says simply to wash the lids and keep them clean until you're ready to use them. I use a magnetic pickup jar lid, or just because then I'm not getting my hands and the oils on there. So I go ahead and put my lids on. I'll put my screw bands on, and you really want to make these just finger tight. You don't really want to go, you know, too tight on these. Basically, I say until you get some resistance. So we'll go ahead and put this on, put these in. I have my canner preheated. It's set for 75 minutes because I have pint jars, and I will be back once we get these all jarred up, canned, okay? All right, I took these out of the canner and they look pretty good. You can see they're bubbling and they've already started to pop, meaning they were sealed, but I want to leave these undisturbed now for about 12 hours. Welcome back. Yesterday we made eggs in a jar, breakfast in a jar really, and today I think it turned out really, really well. Looks great, and I'll go ahead and show you what it turned out to be. Now remember, I like to reuse my lids for dehydrating, and as long as you don't put any kind of a hole in them, that works out really well. So my trick is to just use an old knife and then to lift the lid, and then the lid doesn't bend at all. It works out well. So here's what the inside of this looks like. Remember, this has got ham and eggs, cheese, onions, mushroom, and peppers in it. Definitely can smell the egg and the onion, maybe the pepper, I would say. Let's see how it is. The egg is like a baked egg. It's really smooth, it's creamy, it's easy. The potato, soft but not mushy, so really, really good. In full confession, once I looked at the video that I did yesterday and got these ready to can, I realized I forgot to add the milk. So I did have to empty all of the jars and stir in about 1 3/4 cups of milk, and then put them back in jars and clean them up. So that took a little bit of extra time, but the end result is really, really good. So this is definitely a recipe worth trying. Let me put it out on a plate. Sometimes it just slides out, as it did this time. So you can break that up if you want. You can slice it. Really, this is probably enough almost for 2. Probably easier to just eat it out of a jar, but I just want to give you a look at what this looks like, and it really did come out well. So breakfast in a jar works really well. Again, anytime you're canning with meat, you want to make sure your pints are canned for 75 minutes, quarts 90 minutes. This particular jar recipe I like to do in pints just because it's really breakfast size. Works well. This becomes shelf stable. You can put this on your shelf, I would say, for about 6 months. Is comfortable, is what I would be comfortable with. This is definitely a repeat recipe that my family really likes. I should say my husband and I. And they're definitely worth the time. So if you liked this video, you want the recipe, the link is below. I sure would appreciate a thumbs up, or to follow me, or to get notified when I have more videos, because this is a new channel for me. This is really only my 2nd video, so I'm not real good with the technology yet. But please follow me. Please let your friends know about this, because I plan on bringing lots more recipes. In the meantime, check out my website, dryitcanit.com, for more recipes, and I'll keep trying to post once a week. In the meantime, have a good day. Happy dehydrating. Happy canning.